interesting thing to look at. At the Diabetes Center here, and I'm sure all of you are as knowledgeable as I am in your diabetes centers, those of you who work in diabetes centers, you know, when you're interviewing a patient, you always ask, why are you here, or what questions do you want to make sure are addressed? And we actually write them down on a board in our classes, and we have lists and lists, and actually years and years worth of questions that people, when they first walked into class, wanted answered by the time they finished diabetes education. Also, if you go online, there's books written about the myths or the perception of the patient. What are the myths that we hear about diabetes? So I just chose a couple that are the popular ones. And what's interesting, well, let's see. What should I say? Here we go. Now we know what button is there. Nutrition myths. Eating too much sugar causes diabetes. We all hear this, but actually, I think the patient's perception, they think that they're being told this by their providers, whether it's their physician, nurse practitioners, who else, family members. But so whether or not that's actually what they're being told, that's what they're hearing, and that's what they're expecting us to address when they walk into us. So eating too much sugar. Brown sugar is better than white sugar for people with diabetes. Still going on. We've been hearing that for decades. So those of you who just don't want to admit, brown sugar is white sugar with molasses on it to make it brown. So it's sugar, and it is not better, and yet it is still continues to be an issue.
How about honey?
Oh, honey. Oh, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Honey. It's natural. But they sell it at the flea market, and it says it's okay for diabetes. we see all of those. Avoid carbohydrates to lose weight. We'll talk a little bit more about that a little later. But, you know, that I'm just going to totally eliminate carbs. And so that's still very common. One of my favorites, and I saw this twice in when I looked back at a couple of years' worth of the questions, was on brown eggs. Brown eggs are healthier than white eggs. It's just the breed of the chicken that determines the color, but that's a misconception. Avoid seafood to lower blood cholesterol. This is common, and people are being told this common. We have to be careful because I think, yes, there's higher cholesterol level in certain seafood, but shellfish, but still greater than 90% of cholesterol issues are just sheer genetics.
They don't believe you.
I think. No, I know. I know. No, not yet. So genetic, you know, we can't choose our parents, we can't choose our parents, but that's really such a big issue. Now, I'm not suggesting that we deep fat fry shrimp and eat barrels of it, but that's just overeating. I'll never advocate overeating anything, but I think that avoidance of seafood is misunderstood by patients, misunderstood by other healthcare professionals, perhaps. People with diabetes must eat 3 meals a day, 2 to 3 snacks. Anybody who's been to these programs that I've been involved in before, no, they don't eat snacks. It depends on their regimen, their management. It depends on whether they're children versus adults, whether they're training for a marathon, or just sitting at a desk most of the day. There is nowhere that it says we have to give in between meal snacks and bedtime snacks. And for most of us in this room, I'm guessing the majority of us probably spend at least half our time with adults, if not all our time with adults. So if we're dealing with type 2 population, not on insulin, not on sulfonylureas, they never need to have a snack. They may want it, but if hypoglycemia is not a significant risk because of their treatment, they do not need that. So we've got a long way to go because a lot of when you just scan, when you Google diabetes dies, when you Google information, which is what our patients are doing, even the stuff that we put out, American Diabetes Association puts out, there'll always be this 3 meals a day and snacks. My goal is to get an optional, at least printed in some of the materials that are out there, to try to get away from that Now we all hear too many rules for the diabetes diet, too many rules to have to follow. I think that we all need to do a better job, myself included, in making sure they understand they just need to eat. You know, we want them to eat reasonably, and getting away from the exchange lists, the rigid diets, rigid portion control. You know, I'm not talking about a person with diabetes who has renal failure, is on, you know, getting ready for hemodialysis, but they're not there yet. There are certain restrictions that, you know, if we don't stress them, the patient will die. So, but just a general person, we need to make this much more easy, much less rigid. So get away from the exchange list, the meal planning that are rigid. There will always be those people that are kind of compulsive, who will adhere to it, who want the rigidity. That's great. It's not the majority. Let's see. Beef is bad for me. That's another one. It's bad. I can't eat this. My cholesterol's too high. Well, I think that, you know, I don't have a whole lot of patients that are eating prime rib and prime cuts of beef on a daily basis. That's not, you know, that's the high-fat beef. I think nowadays we can also encourage patients to choose leaner cuts. There are leaner cuts. If they totally avoid red meat, that's perfectly fine. But I think we need to be truthful. Is it bad? No. Are there ways to get leaner, healthier choices of beef? Yes. We just need to be truthful. I can eat as much sugar-free food as I want when I have diabetes. Now we're still seeing this. We will probably always see this, even though there's an awful lot written, a lot of information out there for patients. They're not looking. They're not looking. They're not reading that. So I think the nutrition myths, they may evolve into something I can't even think of now, but we're always going to have our patients walking in with preconceived notions that are very, very hard to change. So I think, you know, when we do an assessment, an initial assessment, an initial visit, those who have the luxury of having people come back, really try to see what their ideas are. What do they understand about diabetes? What do they understand about their diet? And number one, where are they willing to change? And downplay trying to correct the ideas of some of the myths, because we may or may not convince them of certain things. But we can recognize these are strong beliefs. These were the more common ones. You probably have, can tell me plenty more.